All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the live stream. It's the first one we've done in a long time, more than 2 months. We got Mrs. Mooch moderating the comments, so be on your best behavior. If you get jettisoned, I can't help you. And you can see we have Ingrid here on the floor, the white one, and then Sailor on the couch. Family update. We lost Decker a few weeks ago, our little PBGV. The boy, he's been on a couple of episodes before. So he crossed the Rainbow Bridge a few weeks ago. He had a heart issue. So we miss him very much, but we have the other two here with us. So gang's all here. As subscribers and frequent viewers know, we were just out at Tailhook in Reno. This year, the convention went from the Nugget to the Grand Sierra Resort, a much nicer facility and a much nicer exhibition center. And while we were there, we did 3 episodes. We did the one with Sluggo Hazara, who is the KC-135 pilot, talking about the basics of tanking and specifically how he helped come up with the tanker plan during Desert Storm, which became the model for what we did thereafter in terms of Tomcats and tactical carrier jets tanking off of KC-135s and KC-10s. So Sluggo came up with most of that. Very cool conversation. If you haven't seen that one, check it out. And then Hoser and I chatted with Nasty, who's going to be on the channel in the coming weeks from Annapolis here. He, in the intervening months since he was on the channel, became the chairman of the board of the Tailhook Association. And as you guys know, from the episodes that he's been on, he was a Tomcat pilot. He was the CEO of an aircraft carrier, and then he was a strike group commander. So we've talked about his Tomcat time, but we haven't really focused on his more senior officer experience. So we're going to talk about that when we have him on in the weeks to come. And so then Hoser and I walked the floor at Hook and talked about some of what had happened. Again, kind of a fun episode, a little bit unorthodox. And then the last of the 3 was my conversation with Rear Admiral Stem Miguez. And interesting. So I saw him going into the lecture that he and the other folks from Ike Strike Group did, the presentation where they were talking about that deployment in the Red Sea. We caught up and I asked him in passing, hey, we have a booth here. Can you come by? What are you doing for the rest of the day? Can you come by and chat? And he was like, sure, I'd love to. So I said, okay, after the presentation, I'll come, look for you. And so he was pretty much mobbed after the presentation. So once that died down, I went up to him and said, okay, you ready to go? So yeah, he said, yeah. And his PAO came up and said, okay, what's happening? And he goes, oh, this is Mooch, known him for a long time. Are you familiar with his YouTube channel? She said, yes. And then she said, we're not doing media. And I said, that's fine. I'm not really media. And she said, and this is a pretty wise statement, it turns out. She said, yes, but media look at your channel. And I never thought of it that way. And it turns out she was right. So she handed me her business card and she said, email me for a request. And I looked at Stem, Admiral Miguez, and I'm like, seriously? And he said, okay, we don't need to do that. He went sidebar with her and he came back, okay, let's do it. And so she was in tow there. So anyway, it turns out she was right. And I think this is pretty much the first time this has ever happened since I created the channel. But Business Insider did what we call a write-through about the episode. So let me share the screen here. So here it is, Business Insider. Here's the headline: Navy commander who oversaw carrier strike group in the Red Sea says U.S. command rejected suggestions to hit Houthis harder over concerns about Iran. So this was her fear. And again, she was right, that an outlet like Business Insider would key on one thing he said over anything else, and perhaps the context would be lost. So I've never met Matthew Lowe at Business Insider. So he writes, U.S. Navy commander who oversaw most of the Dwight D. Eisenhower Carrier Strike Group 8-month deployment in the Red Sea said officers had suggested more aggressive strikes on the Houthis, but high command declined them. Admiral Miguez said in an interview with YouTuber Ward Carroll, and that hot link drives to the interview on my YouTube channel, that the U.S. National Command Authority had to consider Iran's response. Quote, there are definite strategies that were put forward, but our National Command Authority decided that those I would call more aggressive postures and more aggressive strikes was not something we wanted to challenge, Miguez said in the interview published Monday. Quote, we all know Iranian-backed groups like the Houthis, where that threat's emanating from, he said. And so that's the calculus that is handled at echelon 0. And that's an expression I didn't hear till Tailhook. I guess that means the White House. At the National Command Authority with NSA and everybody else. Those are things that I don't dabble in, he added. Miguez told Carroll that the Carrier Strike Group launched 7 dedicated attacks on Houthi targets during its twice extended deployment from October 23 to June 24. The group, which includes the aircraft carrier Ike, was previously reported to have launched more than 500 munitions to hit the Yemeni rebels directly and intercept their drones and missiles as they attack commercial ships in the Strait. Since the Eisenhower Group departed, Theodore Roosevelt and Abraham Lincoln have moved to the Middle East as regional tensions continue. Miguez indicated he believed the U.S. should adopt a more aggressive posture toward the Houthis. Quote, moving forward, we're going to have to continue to deal with this, he said. It'll be up to our National Command Authority to probably be more aggressive with our strike groups and all of our assets, not just Navy. The Houthis have said they only targeted ships linked with Israel over the war in Gaza, but the group has also launched attacks on vessels from other countries that have no apparent ties to Tel Aviv. More recently, the rebel group attacked a Greek-flagged oil tanker that was left drifting in the Red Sea. Miguez said to stop the attacks, the U.S. needed to marshal all of its resources more aggressively, including diplomacy and economic policy. If we can get focused with a whole-of-government approach, I think that's what's going to result in a freedom of navigation in that critical strait, which impacts about 20% of global commerce. And he's just been appointed chief of legislative affairs. And he's been, it says, since leaving command of the Eisenhower Strike Group, he's been vocal about U.S. needing more training to fight drones. This is interesting. U.S. Navy spokesperson told Business Insider the force had nothing to add to Miguez's remarks. All right. So that's kind of interesting. What we call a right through. Now, if you've seen the episode, you realize that Admiral Miguez was totally professional, and there was no intent to, get out over his skis or to somehow call out the chain of command. So this is sort of what I guess, and having been the media at military.com and We're the Mighty, I get it. But again, at first I was a little bit irritated by the PAO sort of being a gatekeeper, but in hindsight, she was right. Yeah. So Stephen, all admirals and all commands have a PAO among them, and it's not really a publicist, and they're both offense and defense, and that's just the way it is. This is not irregular, nor is there anything untoward about the presence of a PAO, especially with such a high-vis topic. And this is the beauty of the Tailhook convention, is you hear things that you wouldn't hear anywhere else. Completely an unclassified brief, but the level of detail and sort of the familiarity in the room, because we're among other aviators, is unique. So this was a great Tailhook convention, and I'm really glad that Admiral Miguez, who I've known for 30 years, sat down with us. So if you haven't seen that episode, check it out. It's really a good one, and indication that we're having the kind of impact that we want, in that it got picked up by Business Insider. All right, now topic du jour. In our last episode, dealing with the war in Ukraine, frequent guest and our 2-time Mooch Award winner Justin Bronk said the following about Ukraine's newly arrived F-16s.
we're not seeing a huge amount of what the Ukrainians are doing with F-16, which in many ways is quite encouraging. It suggests that they're being fairly cautious with them. It suggests that they are probably concentrating on working out and practicing the dispersed operating model, supporting them in country, the various support arrangements for that, keeping ahead of Russian targeting and essentially keeping a low profile while that workup, if you like, in country is underway. And as such, there's not been a huge amount visible. And as I say, that's probably a very encouraging thing to see.
So now that has changed. 2 days ago, Ukraine's Air Force used F-16, a section or more of F-16s as part of its defense against Russia's mass missile and drone attack, as confirmed by President Volodymyr Zelensky's press conference the day after that. Russia targeted 15 of Ukraine's 24 oblasts on August 26th, launching 236 missiles and drones as part of the largest ever aerial attack against Ukraine. Ukraine downed 102 missiles and 99 drones of the 127 missiles and 109 drones launched by Russia during the morning attack. Zelensky told reporters that the F-16s gave a very good result, and he added, "We thank our partners for providing us with the F-16s. Of course, that's not enough. We don't have many of them, and we still need to train pilots." Again, Kyiv has been promised at least 79 F-16s from the Netherlands, Denmark, Norway, and Belgium. They've reportedly received 10 jets so far, and as you heard in the episode we did with Justin, they expect 20 by the end of this calendar year. Russian strikes targeted 15 oblasts, including Kyiv, damaging civilian and energy infrastructure. At least 7 people were killed, 47 were injured, including 4 children, according to the state emergency services. This photo shows civilians taking shelter in a Kyiv subway. A dam in Kyiv, part of the Kyiv hydroelectric power plant, was also struck. Reports from the site confirmed that the power plant appeared to have some localized damage, but didn't appear to be in a critical state. Andrei Kovalenko, the head of the Counter-Disinformation Department at Ukraine's National Security and Defense Council, said that the hydroelectric power plants cannot be destroyed by missiles. He added that the attack on the Kyiv dam was different than the destruction of the Kavkovka dam in Kherson Oblast in June of 2023 that was blown up by Russian troops from the inside, causing a large-scale humanitarian and environmental disaster across southern Ukraine. Floods caused by that breach killed over 30 people in Ukrainian-held territories, between dozens and 100 more Russians in Russian-occupied areas. At least tens of thousands of people were affected by the floods, while hundreds of thousands were left without access to clean drinking water. The breach also resulted in extensive damage to the environment and agriculture. Critical infrastructure facilities were destroyed, and the draining of the Kavkovka reservoir upstream from the dam threatened the operation of Russian-occupied Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. The Dnipro hydroelectric power plant in Zaporizhzhia was hit and heavily damaged during massive Russian aerial campaign in March of 2024. Though the dam itself was not breached, which is a good thing. So this is kind of in better times, and this is what it looked like after it was hit. According to officials, Kakovka is currently completely out of commission, and the Dnipro station is, by all measure, doesn't work. The director of Ukhrhydroenergo, which is the Ukrainian energy agency, said they were doing all they can to restore its infrastructure, but it is difficult to make long-term predictions in light of Russia's ongoing attacks. Strike on a hotel in the central city of Kryvyi Rih on Tuesday morning killed 2 people. Another 3 people were killed in drone attacks on the city of Zaporizhia. The Ukrainian Air Force said Russia had launched 10 ballistic missiles and 81 drones during the assault, and Ukrainian air defense had shot down 5 of the missiles and 60 of the drones. Authorities in Kyiv said everything that had targeted that city had been shot down. A big part of Russia's strategy, absent any conventional military gains, is to target Ukraine's civilian population centers and infrastructure with the hope that the population will get demoralized and petition the Zelensky government for an end to the fighting. So far, the Russian actions appear to have only strengthened Ukraine's resolve. And on the offensive side of the equation, the Ukrainian deep strikes continue. A couple of weeks ago, the SBU claimed Ukrainian long-range drones hit 4 Russian air bases in the largest attack on the airfields in the war. The bases are home to squadrons of Su-34s, Su-35s, and other aircraft, and the targets were fuel and lubricant warehouses and aerial ammunition storage depots. The longest range strike hit the airbase at Savasleika. I'm having some trouble with these city pronunciations. Savasleika, located some 400 miles from the border with Ukraine. The Ukrainians also hit Kalino Air Base in Kursk, 60 miles away from the border, where MiG-29s are based. And that's what this looked like. Russia has carried out a number of strikes against air bases in an effort to weaken the more powerful Russian Air Force. The attack against an air base in Lipetsk Oblast on August 9th destroyed more than 700 bombs. And the Kursk incursion continues. So here's the Institute for the Study of War map. As we point out every time we talk about Ukraine, the pink shaded area remains relatively unchanged since, let's say, a month into the invasion. But if you note this yellow portion at the north, just above Kharkiv, that, as you can see from the legend, is Ukrainian incursion into Russia. So that's what that area is. So Ukraine has captured 594 Russian soldiers and seized 100 settlements during the first 3 weeks of the operation, designed to divert Russian combat units away from the east, where they've been advancing, which is a key Ukrainian army and transport hub at Perovsk and the town of Kurakhov, according to General Alexander Sivsky, the Ukrainian military commander-in-chief. The general also said the Russians had redeployed 30,000 troops to Kursk in an attempt to counterattack and encircle Ukrainian forces. So I've heard some experts sort of try to surmise what the incursion is going to yield and whether the Russians are just going to cut them off at the base, again, as Justin and I described and chatted about during that last episode. Strikes me as sort of a brilliant stroke to redefine the fight. But it is there is some risk there. So we'll be keeping our eyes on that. And then finally, before we get to some of the comments here in the chat, before the live stream started, Chris Draw asked for some information on the Polyantzia Pulse jet drone, which is being developed by a company called PARS in Ukraine. Oh, that's the wrong. Let me get you the right video here. Hold on. Here we go. So here they are making this thing. The developers say the new missile called the Trombita is being created as a low-cost kamikaze drone for breaking through enemy air defenses by a swarm of missiles capable of carrying a 20-kilogram warhead. Mini cruise missile, albeit designed to distract and deceive enemy air defense systems, can execute strike and possibly other functions. Quote, our simple missile is incomparably cheaper than shots of enemy aircraft missile systems, according to the developers. On top of that, the engine runs on regular gasoline and has few or no moving parts. Fuel and air are combusted within a simple hollow tube. Hot gases are pushed out the back to produce thrust. And as we know from earlier in the war, when they were designing their own octocopters, the Ukrainian engineering brain trust is very strong. This is a country of engineers and manufacturers. So that they would be designing their own mini cruise missile is not an incredible surprise. And as they sort of state in that quote, this could be used as a suppression of enemy air defenses. You can imagine a swarm of these coming at an integrated air defense, forcing them to focus on those while either drones or conventional aircraft come in via another axis, or just be weapons by themselves. So kind of a cool thing. So Chris, thanks for that question. And hopefully that's an answer for you there. All right. So let's get to the comments here. So Richard Briscoe says the strikes against several targets inside Russian have caused Russia to withdraw some forces to defend Russia. I think Ukraine could stand to make a Doolittle raid on Moscow. So I think they've demonstrated they have the capability to reach Moscow. And you remember, I did an episode of this, a very short episode some months ago, about how they hit the Kremlin with a drone. And it was unclear whether that was a domestic terrorist or that was a Ukrainian based in sovereign Russia. But the Ukrainians are showing a lot of moxie here, a lot of audacity with their willingness to attack sovereign Russia. And the idea that they would strike Moscow proper again is within their means. It's just a matter of how much you want to poke the bear, literally. Will Stein, Ukrainian has a large aerospace industry, both in aviation and space, as well as a large IT sector. Right. So part of this is why President Putin wants Ukraine back. Their shipbuilding, access to the Black Sea, Odessa, particularly, wants more than Sevastopol as a port, and their overall brain trust, their engineering sector. As well as he just wants another buffer against NATO. So yes, that's certainly true. A nerd? No, you don't want that one? No. Okay. JP says the new UA missile is a jet turbine, however. So you're saying it's not a ramjet. Is that what you're saying there? So this is the loose and free play part of the presentation.
Go ahead and pick something.
So our good friend AvGeek Joe, who is at Tailhook, we met him in person for the first time. Any more awesome Tailhook videos in the works, Mooch? No, that was it. We did 3 this year. Pretty happy with the way all those 3 came out. So that's it for now. As I've teased out in other episodes, including the Admiral Miguez episode most recently, we're headed to Norfolk a week from Friday, September 6th. We'll be down in Norfolk aboard the USS Eisenhower. It's the first time I'm going to be on Ike since 1992, talking to Captain Chowda Hill. If you followed him on Twitter during their cruise, and now he gives us a lot of cool leadership tidbits, but if you follow him on Twitter, he broke the mold, along with his XO, Farva Price, with how to use social media, mostly Twitter, but also they were up Facebook and Instagram. So I'm going to talk to him about his point of view of the cruise as CEO of the ship, and also, how he executed his social media, which was really cool. It was a morale booster, and also he had a little Twitter war going on with the Houthis. It was kind of cool. So we're talking to him on September 6th, and then 2 weeks after that, we'll be down at the Oceana Air Show. So if you're in the greater Hampton Roads area, and we were down there last year and we met a lot of folks, it was super cool. So we're going to do it again this year. You guys may remember we had to miss Sunday last year, but we're going to be there all 3 days, or at least, Friday, if you can get in for the practice show. Public days are Saturday and Sunday. So we're going to be there all those days. So we would love to say hi. And during that time, we're going to talk to Admiral Verissimo again. So this will be the 3rd time he's been on the channel. He is the commander of Naval Air Force Atlantic. Last time we talked to him was aboard the Ford. You guys may remember that episode. And we're going to talk to the CAG of Air Wing 3, Starvin Marvin Scott, who started life as a Tomcat pilot, and get his point of view on how they executed the alerts and the cycles. You heard some of that from Admiral Miguez, but we're going to get more details from him. So exciting episodes coming up. So we'll hear more about Ike's groundbreaking, historic combat cruise. All right, John Akima asks, Russian limited AWACS platforms will require a change in operating coverage to deal with the push into Kursk. That could be a big deal. Okay, so if you're talking about a change in Russian operating coverage, is that what you mean, John? Because they have their limited AWACS. I think that's true. And this is what's really brilliant about this incursion, is it came out of nowhere. And I think I've seen some media that's criticizing the way that Putin has responded. He may have some domestic pressure, because as I mentioned in the news piece, they have taken over 100 villages and taken X number of Russian prisoners, 500 or so Russian prisoners. And you've seen the videos, and I showed some of these last time in the episode with Justin, where they're driving through Russian suburbs and there are burned out Russian vehicles on the side of the road, and so this is not good for Russian morale. For once, they're shifting this, flipping the script, as we say. So yes, certainly things like their defensive force posture, their integrated air defense, their ground-based air defense, and their overall battle picture is going to have to get adjusted pretty dramatically. FJ Cook asks, have there been any NATO naval developments / cruises to the Black Sea since the invasion in February of 22? The answer is no. If not, do you think there would be one, and under what circumstances? So as a forward-leaning disciple of guys like Stephen Decatur, I think there should be one, right? I think we should be right up against the shoreline. Now, can you establish force protection? Well, I think the Red Sea has proved we can. Right now, what are the accords that at the bridge in the Turkish Straits there, the Dardanelles Accords, I think is what they're called. I think they're preventing any American, UK, NATO warships from entering the Black Sea through those straits. Somebody check me on that. So obviously that would prevent us, if we wanted to play nice with our NATO partner Turkey, from going into the Red Sea. But I certainly think that's within our capability, and I think we could establish the force protection to do it. Is it provocative? Massively, yes. Great question. Colin Kunkel, can non-aviators join the Tailhook Association as associate members? Yes, absolutely. And I highly recommend it. The Tailhook Association, under the leadership of the current board and the current executive director, Chaser Keithley, is fantastic. And so I've been a member since I was a lieutenant, and I've been a life member for the last 3 or 4 years. And it has always been the most professional of the professional association that I'm part of. And also, it's got the energy that is really motivating. So on Friday night, there is a mixer called the Bug Roach Mixer, which is Bug Roach, the LSO that Hoser and I have profiled on the channel, who was in an A4 crash some years ago. The mixer and some other things are dedicated to him. So all of the active duty aviators from Fallon, including the Air Wing that is at Fallon at that time. And this year, Carrier Air Wing 5 was there. Now, in my where are the carriers and how come, what is China doing to take advantage of the fact we don't have a carrier in the Far East right now episode that I did a few episodes ago. I mentioned that we had done a hull swap between Reagan and George Washington in San Diego. So Reagan had been the forward deployed carrier in Japan, the 7th Fleet forward deployed carrier. CAG-5 is aboard that carrier. GW is swapping out with them. GW came out of the refueling and comprehensive overhaul, RCOH, which took a while and didn't go so great. But now she's out, good to go. She's on her way over there. Meanwhile, the Air Wing is here. And so they're at Fallon. So all of those folks were at the Bug Roach Mixer. So amazing, amazing insights and great spirit. They're wearing squadron hockey jerseys and bowling shirts and what we call shit hots, the colored flight suits, regular flight suits. It was jam-packed with active duty folks. I posted a picture in the community tab of a number of JOs who are big fans of the channel who came by, F-35 Super Hornet Growler guys who mentioned that they watched it religiously while they were in flight school, which did my heart good. And they brought me up to speed on some of the issues that they're facing now. So in the F-35 RAG, there's a backup because they're waiting for that new software upgrade, and that's holding up production. So once that hits, they're going to get 70 airplanes in short order, and that'll free up that bottleneck. And then in the training command, the T-45 engines are having a turbine blade problem, and that's really affecting jet availability and holding them up. So I know Rolls-Royce is working hard and NavAir to fix that, but for right now, it's not an awesome situation. But you wouldn't hear these things straight from, the source unless you were at Hook, right? And so that's really the other thing that you wouldn't see, or at least, if I'm not on the carrier or at the squadron, I'm just, going up ground news or looking at stuff just like all of you, or on the phone with guys. But it's really cool to hear from these guys directly. And I will tell you, especially those guys who are underway and the folks who just came back on Ike. So they do a 8-9 month cruise, and you're thinking they would have kind of an attitude that like that sucked. No, they're super motivated. And whatever Miguez mentioned during the brief is he would ask, do you guys want a port call? And they would say, no, we want more ammo, which is very cool, right? So give folks a mission that's consequential and they're ready to go. Cynicism comes from when you're just drilling holes in the sky or doing something that is inconsequential. So these folks are up and locked, and that was very cool to see. So it's kind of a long answer for can civilians and non-aviators join the Tailhook Association? They can. The website is tailhook.org. Check it out. Support them. Support the Tailhook Educational Foundation, a very cool organization. David Smith asks, are EA-6 Growlers still flying signal support missions for NATO/Ukraine? I don't know. I did that one episode about Spangalum, where there was an expeditionary squadron. I don't know. Somebody research that and let us know in the chat. I think the answer may be no, but I don't know. Check me out. Keep me honest here. Your boss man, my son just left the Arleigh Burke after serving full duty while on board as master helmsman. Awesome. Good work, Dad. Tell him I said hello and thank you.
Let's see. Oh, this is just kind of...
Sparky, one of my signature patrons, former Prowler intruder driver, was the Bug Roach mixer a sweatbox like 2023? No, I am pleased to tell you, because it was ridiculous, right? That was the function, not to badmouth the Nugget, but the AC shut down in that wing. I forgot all about that, Sparky. So no, it was super comfortable. The exhibition floor, as you saw in the episode that I did with Hoser as we did the walk and talk, is varsity, high roof, just like you go to the Gaylord or the Washington Convention Center or anywhere else, around the DC area for these professional association conferences. It was super cool. So AC was not a problem. It was good stuff.
You pick one.
Mrs. Mooch is telling me to pick one. Okay. Mario Kart 23. Do you think Israel will strike Iran first before they can get a bunch of missiles off? I think they certainly have the ability and the desire to do that if they get tipper information. What I'm seeing, so we did that. Does this mean war? Episode a few weeks ago, and after the dual assassinations that Mossad pulled off in Beirut and Tehran. So that kind of forced Iran's hand. I sort of thought, not unlike what happened, a few months ago when they launched rockets at Israel. Again, telegraphed that they were doing it. The Iron Dome was able to stop 95% of those. So it wasn't like their most aggressive look. But what I'm seeing now, and all the indications I'm getting, is a strike on Israel is not imminent. And I think tempers have cooled down a little bit. I'm sure there's some posturing. I'm not saying it couldn't happen, but Mooch's belief is if it was going to happen, it would have already happened. FJ asked, I think the Hawk T2s at RAF Valier were having similar issues to the T-45s not long ago. So they probably have the same Rolls-Royce engines. So a lot of folks are asking, okay, how do we get ourselves in these predicaments? We have a systems command, Naval Air Systems Command. We have industry partners. We have, these airplanes are old. How do we not anticipate these issues, and why do we not already have the follow-on jet coming online? Well, that's probably an episode for another day in and of itself, how budget cycles work and what it takes to get an airplane fielded. But the short bumper sticker is, in order to get a platform in the budget, defense contractors have got to have a stretch promise about how long the airplane's going to last or the platform will last, or else they're not going to win, right? And then along the way, there's some ability to fix things baked in, but that always results in either a grounding order or, limited capabilities. We're seeing it with V-22 now. We've seen it before with every type model series. The Super Hornet, remember, their FMC rates, their fully mission capable rates a couple of years ago were really down. So the T-45 is facing that now because what happens is you have this sort of planned maintenance degradation, and the supply chain is sort of postured to accommodate it, and then it falls off the cliff with a catastrophic failure like turbine blades, prop rotor gearboxes. Tomcat had a problem with the B and D afterburner liner. So at that point, you're kind of in extremis, and the machine is not keeping up. Now, it can rapidly iterate to try to solve the problem, but in the meantime, flight students and certain other platform pilots, air crews, fleet commanders are get to the short end of the stick. So we'll keep our eyes on how this plays out. And I think, now that I think about it, it's worth talking about procurement, which can be a pretty dry topic, but I think if I get the right guy on, I'm thinking, hey, Joe Parsons would be a good guy for this one. We'll talk about why this happens. The Zyron says, my take on Iran is their new president does not want to commit the country to a full-scale attack on Israel and prefers to go through the proxies. I believe that that's true. Sanderford, $5, thank you. France is talking about sending late model Mirage 2000s to Ukraine. Do you see that having similar lead time to the F-16 program? Probably, right? Because they have to source them, and then the Ukrainians have to figure out how to support them. And the force protection piece, that's a big part of it. It's exactly as Justin has said for all these months. You know, he has been right on everything that he's presaged for the most part. That's a cool idea. Obviously, I think the Zelensky government would take anything they could get. They did say some years ago, and I covered this, they didn't want A-10s because they're too limited in their mission focus, you know, just strictly a ground attack airplane, a kick-ass one, no doubt, but they want a multi-role fighter. So that would be interesting. And if it happens, we'll cover it for sure. Smedley Do-Right asks, how many F-16s did Ukraine get so far? As I said earlier, they have 10. They're getting 20 by Justin's assertion by the end of the year. Ultimately, or so far, they've been promised 79, which, as we commented, that's not enough, right? They're going to need more than 79, but it's a good start. Does Mirage have the air intake for rough runways? No, and that's why Justin likes which Swedish airplane? Is it the Gripen that he likes for that very reason? It's more robust in unprepared surfaces. But certainly the Ukrainians have some, clean runways, and if they keep them FOD free, it shouldn't be a huge issue. Nickname 123321 asks, most of the current F-16s are Dutch and Danish. Yes, as we reported. And the other countries who've promised them so far are Norway and Belgium. Again, none of the F-16s that have been promised are American F-16s. And these are mostly because these countries are getting the JSF, so they have a surplus of F-16s. Ing5 says 6 pilots F-16s flying in UA are now being flown by Ukraine. Okay, so 6, not 10. Okay, that's good gouge. Thank you. It's Greg 06. If you could return one aircraft to service with the Navy, excluding the Tomcat, well, that's no fair. Which would it be? That's a great question. So here's a weird answer. And it's not really a Navy airplane, but this was an experiment that was tried before the war in Iraq and Afghanistan ended. Our involvement in it ended, and that's an OV-10. The OV-10, armored up and with more hard points, is a kick-ass asymmetric warfare platform. And I think that would be a cool airplane to use in Ukraine, assuming some local air superiority when you have it. So this wouldn't be A-10s alone and unafraid. It would be A-10s, or not A-10s, OV-10s alone and unafraid. Broncos. Alone and unafraid, but it would be OV-10s down low, F-16s, and other Ukrainian assets in company, right? And this is what we've been talking about. No one platform is the silver bullet. What the Ukrainians have got to unlock as they get this capability, and this includes HIMARS, Patriot, Abrams and Leopard tanks, everything else that they've gotten that they're using to good effect, but some of it's in a vacuum. So when you think of an offensive and a defensive military strategy as the sum total of integrated systems, then you start to get an advantage. And so that would be my answer, since you excluded the Tomcat, right? Otherwise, it would be the Super Tomcat, as I described in my episode some months ago about here's what would have happened, right, Jeff? The Super Tomcat 21. Again, if you imagine the Tomcat evolving, we're not talking about an F-14A circa 1975. We're talking about something that Grumman would have built along the way that is modular, scalable. It can keep up with technology and software upgrades. It has a glass cockpit that it's just new software to give it new HUD or integrate a visor like the Joint Strike Fighter or Jehimix, whatever. It would have all those things. 2 guys, yes, because in some mission areas, as you've even heard some Hornet pilots say on the channel, 2 guys are necessary, particularly close air support. You heard CAG Converse say when we were out on Truman that the F-18F is dedicated to the high workload missions, and that's the pilot and WISO, including FAC-A and close air support. So that would be that's my quick answer. And this is backed up by what N. Alder is saying here. The Canadians have a kick-ass throwback of the OV-10. Super impressive. Yeah, this was an experiment that was done that succeeded, but then just wasn't resourced. So, as they say, a program without money is a pipe dream. Rain Man, when I was in Fallon in the mid-2010s, we had OV-10s with Air Force markings, but they weren't Air Force. Right. Got it. Right. It's like my friend works at the State Department, but not really the State Department. Okay. What else we got, Mrs. Mooch?
I don't take a stab.
Okay. So Carl says, hey, Joe or Paco Benitez would be a good source of knowledge on that subject. Hey, Joe, for sure. He was involved. It's probably all that I can say about that. And I'm not sure how much you can say about what he did. So now that you bring it up, Carl, another episode that we're going to do in the weeks to come, I was contacted by my longtime good friend, Captain Bill Shepard, Navy SEAL astronaut, badass, who I've known since 1989. He's a fan of the channel. He's been a fan of my efforts and a big supporter and a mentor the whole way along, even before the YouTube channel existed. So he has some insights about the Russian space program that are exclusive. And he's heading over to do a regular annual meeting with the Russians sometime in the weeks to come. When he gets back, we're going to have him aboard to talk about that, because he has a perspective that's different than the one you heard from Scott Kelly a few episodes ago. But he is also smart on this OV-10 program. So I think we've just come up with the idea for another episode. So this is why we do these live streams, and this is why you guys are super helpful as force multipliers for the editorial calendar of the channel, and I thank you for that. Dave Beeler, do you think 2 Saab AWACS aircraft can help Ukraine significantly? And why did Ukraine refuse the Aussie F-18s? I think, again, if you fit the AWACS into the overall puzzle in a way that is a value add, then certainly that is true. But if they have no capability, if they're just flying in sovereign Ukraine beyond what their radar pictures are already, and if the conventional air isn't venturing within the integrated air defense of the Russians, then you probably don't need those. Right? That's just something you got to support that isn't really viable in this current battlefield. So maybe that's a platform for a future capability. Why did Ukraine refuse the F-18s? Because it didn't fit with what they're doing. Remember, the tooth to tail is a big part of this. It's what's the maintainability, sustainability, and what's the utility. So these are very old airframes. The F-16s that they're getting are a little newer than the CF-18s. And so I think they had to do a sort of, system of systems approach and choose the best option. And again, go back to the episodes we did with Justin at the time when we're talking about, again, the Swedish options, the other EU options, the CF-18 options, the F-16 and who's going to give them options. And he went through all of the goods and others with each one of those. Is pretty definitive sort of logic that Justin gave us. So there you go. Neuropilot, could a somewhat ruggedized FA-50 be a great jet for Ukraine and maybe a backdoor carrier trainer, even a light F-18 style jet? Yeah, I guess that's a good idea. But again, I think people are probably offering these things and they're not accepting them because of the sort of tooth to tail of any one of these platforms. But we will see. So Beavis, Ward, you have an exquisite taste in guitars. Just want to mention that. Thank you. So that brings up another bit of personal news. So my band Danger Boy is currently in hiatus, I guess would be a polite way to put it. Our drummer had to leave because he's too damn busy. He's in some other bands, and this is his full-time vocation. So disappointed to see Richard go. So we're trying to figure out some other options. But we executed our Annapolis World Tour this summer, played 3 shows. Last one was a couple weeks ago at a place called Ram's Head Roadhouse. Fantastic. So that's 18 months of practice and getting the set list suitcased. That's kind of now in limbo. So we'll keep you posted. But thanks, Beavis, for that comment. JP says, yes, maintainers are desperately needed. Don't we know it? That is so true. All right, a couple more here. So Will Stein, Ukraine is working on developing the HRIM-2 short-range ballistic missile system designed to combine features of a tactical missile and a multiple rocket launcher. Is this domestically you're talking about, Will? Because again, they're not waiting for anybody to either tell them how to execute the war, see Kursk excursion or incursion for more on that, or design stuffs. And we're talking about that new mini cruise missile, flood the zone weapon, as well as the octocopter, other stuff. This is a very smart, educated, and motivated population. So have fun with that, Putin. All right, one more. So thanks, a big crowd for a no notice Wednesday afternoon. We don't do these. I don't know if you want us to do more of these or less of them. I like it, the sort of, informal vibe with a live stream. Plus we get to talk to you guys directly. So thanks again for showing up in massive numbers here. We just passed 586,000 subscribers. So if you're in the chat and you're not a subscriber, please become one. The channel is powered by subscribers. And so, you can be a free rider. I love viewers, no doubt, but I love subscribers even more. And if you want to really support the channel, then join us as a patron. And we had some of our patrons out there at Tailhook, and we look forward to seeing folks down at the air show at Oceana. Victor, thanks for the super chat, $20. Victor Franco, thank you very much. Victor's at the Flying Leatherneck Museum out there at the former El Toro location in, what is that, Victor? Tustin or Santa Ana in Orange County, where I was born and lived in my very young life when my dad was a Marine Corps A4 pilot. But we'll be doing more with these guys as this museum comes online. But Victor asks, is there any concern about the F-16 tech falling into Russian hands? I know they're old, but certainly that is a concern, although I would be surprised if they don't already have F-16s, right? Just like we have a whole bunch of MiG-29s. F-16s have been, so widely sold around the world. It is old technology, and what the Ukrainians have are not bleeding edge USAF technology, but let's just not let it fall into Russian hands. How about that? All right. Thanks, Victor, and look forward to being in touch with you. All right, everybody. Obviously, Ingrid is like done with this, but Sailor's not. She's still loving it. So thanks to Mrs. Mooch. Thanks. She says thumbs up to you guys. And thanks to everybody for showing up. And we will do more of these as we go forward. Let me know in the comments now whether this is a format that you enjoy. As soon as I sign off, this becomes an episode. So if you want to come back and check out something that you didn't see in the chat or add a comment, we certainly appreciate that. Again, thanks for the nearly 3,000 of you that showed up for this live stream. Those are some varsity numbers, and I very much appreciate it. If you're not a subscriber, become one. As I just said a few minutes ago, the channel is powered by that. And in the meantime, I look forward to talking to you again very soon. Thanks again.